If you're a Huawei user, are you ready to replace your microSD card with this new proprietary format? Alright, so hey guys, Boom Bobby here. So, been gone for a couple days because I've got hit with a cold, and while I don't think I'm in the coughing phase of the cold, I haven't been feeling the most amazing. Couldn't make videos yesterday because my throat was super sore and killing me. Just spent the day editing photos and taking medicine. I mean, today my throat isn't hurting as much, but as you can hear, I think within a couple days I'm gonna start coughing and shit. So if you see me making cuts in this video because I cough a lot or stuff like that, just bear with me. At least I'm not talking, physically right in front of you right now. So nothing severe. I think it's just a common cold. I mean, it's October. It's starting to get cold down here in the LA area. So, and even though me personally, I prefer cold weather, like I'm one of those people that's like, if I had to choose between eternal winter or eternal spring, I would pick eternal winter. There are, of course, ramifications with that where, you get sick and you catch colds and you don't feel so great. See, I just sniffled there. So just bear with me. I'll make cuts if I have to, and let's get on with this topic here, which I only found about last night, and that is that Huawei is coming out with their own memory card format. Now, this is a proprietary format. This isn't going to be standardized like microSD. In fact, we don't really know if they're going to make this a standard or going to let any other companies like ZTE or Xiaomi get their hands on it. But so far, it sounds like right now Huawei is trying to pull Sony and trying to make their own memory card format, which on one hand makes sense since Huawei is becoming a bigger and bigger company. They're getting into more industries than just making smartphones. But of course, with any proprietary format, the problem is you're usually tied to just buying accessories from that one company, and it's not always easy getting accessories that support it. So what is this proprietary memory card? It is called the NM card or the nano memory card, and the thing about it is it comes in at least 256 gigabytes of storage and 90 megabits per second transfer speed, which sounds like a lot, although it does sound like those are numbers that current SD cards can conquer. So what I think Huawei's trying to say is that they're going to have really high memory. I mean, who knows? Maybe even they'll be even able to take more capacity than SD cards. The NM card is the same size as a nano SIM and 45% smaller than microSD cards. They're currently on the Huawei Mate 20 and Mate 20 Pro, and they can be used in either one of the dual SIM slots on those phones. There's no word on price or availability on these memory cards, though. So, and interestingly enough, when I was doing the research for this video, I came across an Engadget article basically saying, Sony tried to do that with the PlayStation Vita, and those memory cards were super expensive, and it just didn't work out for them. Which in the case of Sony, I can say I have had to use those memory cards. I used to use a PlayStation TV before I bought our PlayStation 4 Slim that my sister especially likes to use for playing Dark Souls 2 on PlayStation now. And yes, in that case, it was just not great. Everybody complained, and yes, those memory cards were super expensive. I mean, I might be exaggerating, but while you can get something like a 64 gigabyte SD card like I can for this camera I'm recording on, for that price, you'll probably get like an 8 or 16 gigabyte card if for your PlayStation Vita. So it's just really ridiculous. In that instance, and I guess it kind of leads me into what I'm about to say. With any proprietary media, the reason these proprietary media are invented is because companies make them so they can make more of a profit out of their product. That's why in the case of Apple, they use lightning cables instead of the lightning port instead of micro USB, because Apple invented the lightning port so they can charge whatever money they want for if a third-party manufacturer says, hey, we want to make cables, and then Apple could say something like, yeah, we're going to charge a bit more than micro USB to manufacture them, but that's why we invented lightning, so we could make more profit than if we just use micro USB. So that's what I think is going on. But I'm not going to shoot down proprietary cables, memory cards, or anything like that completely. Like, if I had it my way, I would want as much standard equipment as possible. You know, I want my camera to use the SD cards. I want my phone to use USB-C, because micro USB, to be honest, is a really fragile port. And if I could just have it in completely that way, then that would be ideal. But I'm not going to say I absolutely hate having to use proprietary ports because, or really proprietary anything, because, you know, I'm reading the notes off my iPad mini. I used to use cameras that have Nikon's really strange accessory ports. Some of you guys may be familiar with this. Like, some Nikon cameras and even their DSLRs, like their D5000, had this really weird little port next to the HDMI port. It's not micro USB, it's their own kind of accessory port. And then Nintendo had, with their DSi and 3DS systems, if you want to charge, you have to use this funky charging port. You couldn't use something like micro USB like you could on a PlayStation Vita. And my take on proprietary anything isn't as black and white as most people. Like, I know most people would say, proprietary, that means you have to buy a cable specifically from that company. To me, proprietary, what's the word I'm looking for? Let's just say proprietary merchandise or accessories work well when you can buy accessories that use that connector or anything, like pretty much anywhere. And if you can use a more common standard, like if it's compatible with a more common standard like micro SD cards and so on and so forth. So what I mean when I say readily available is, I know a lot of people get on Apple for using the Lightning port on their phones, tablets, and the iPod Touch. I give Apple kind of pass. Yes, I mean, I honestly think they should move to USB-C or maybe even to Thunderbolt 3 because they tout it so much on their MacBooks. But I give Apple pass on the Lightning port because you could basically buy Apple accessories anywhere. And not even just from Apple themselves. You know, you could buy an Anchor USB-E cord for the same price, or not the same price, but a similar length to Apple's for around half the price you pay. You know, when you go walking into a Target, Walmart, or Best Buy, or maybe even a dollar store, even though I don't think you should buy any kind of cable from a dollar store, you can find Lightning cables, Lightning accessories, Lightning docks, and it's readily available. So when you need to buy a new Lightning cable, or in my case, when your Lightning headphone jack adapter breaks every so often, here's my Lightning headphone cable I have to buy every once in a while. But, you know, they're readily available, so you can just go walk into a store and buy them at your will. And the other thing I was about to say is backwards compatibility, or if you have the choice of either using the proprietary format or a more common standard. You know, we used to see that on Sony cameras where they had cameras and camcorders that would take either, with their memory card slots, they could take either SD cards or their memory stick format. And in the case of Samsung, you might even remember a while back, Samsung also came out with their own memory card or format, which didn't really go anywhere, called the UFS slot. And, you know, of course, they touted really high speed. But on their website, they even touted this will work in the same slot as your micro SD card slot. So theoretically, if you're a Samsung user, like let's say the Samsung Galaxy S10 comes out and they start implementing UFS card slots, you have the choice of either using Samsung's format for higher memory speeds, or you can get the more common and more affordable micro SD card slot, which I know a lot of companies, especially really greedy companies, don't want to go down that route because then they'll just use the more common standard. You know, nobody will use the proprietary format. But when you have the choice, it's much more ideal and it's more likely going to get used. You know, you may even get customers that will be like, yeah, I'll use Samsung or Huawei's format because there's more storage or higher speed. But if I get in a situation where, oh no, I'm in a rush and my memory card's out, I could just swap out and get a micro SD card. So in that case, backwards compatibility, your proprietary format would have more of a chance. And Huawei technically could have their NM cards work backwards compatibly with microSD, just not in this case, not in the case of the recent Huawei Mate 20, Mate 20 Pro phones. Like when I was doing research, I came across, I sound like a baby there, their Huawei P9 smartphone. And the thing about that phone is it also had dual nano SIM slots, but you could use one of the SIM slots for a micro SD card. And I know that's the thing with other manufacturers, but if Huawei went down that route where their new Mate 20 phones, they said, hey, we're going to have a dual SIM slot, but for one of those card slots, you could either use a SIM card, a micro SD card, or a NM card slot. I honestly think, even though I think in going that way, everybody will just use micro SD or a SIM card slot if they're going to a different country, then that proprietary format would have more of a chance of getting used. As is, where they're just getting rid of micro SD card support, at least on the surface, it's really head scratching, especially since, not that Huawei is a super unknown company, but at least in America, it's not as well known as something like a Samsung, LG, or Apple per se. If one of those three companies, well, Apple already has Lightning, but if Samsung and LG were to come out with a proprietary format, they would have more of a chance. I don't know about LG, but I definitely know Samsung. They would definitely have more of a chance of getting their proprietary formats used because they are so popular and stores are going to want to carry their accessories. Target, Walmart, and Best Buy, if Samsung tells them, hey, we got this UFS card coming out, they would say, oh yeah, we have a lot of Samsung customers. Of course, we'll support your memory cards. Whereas in the case of Huawei's NM card, because they're still relatively niche, like most people I come across that know Huawei are either tech junkies like me or people who really follow China's technological, or China's like computer companies, or how their finances work. Like my mom knows about Huawei because they had some controversy with ZTE. You guys may remember where there was a conspiracy theory that, oh no, Huawei and ZTE phones are being used to spy on Americans, which I kind of bought into that theory, but I'm not going to get into that here. But because Huawei is not as well known a company, at least in, like, I don't know, like at least in America, like maybe in China, the NM card would have a lot more success, but I think at least around here, like it would just have a harder time to find. And nowadays, it would have more success than if Huawei was making smartphones like back when the iPhone first came out. I think they would have more success like nowadays because, I need an NM card. I could just go on something like Amazon or eBay to get them. That's one of the beauties of online shopping, is that your store might not carry the NM cards, but you can go online to find them. So there's that. But as is, I'm not really sure about the success Huawei is going to have. In other markets where Huawei is more popular, I think they would have more of a chance of getting this off the ground. Although, that being said, I'm sure customers over there are going to complain, hey, why can't we just use micro SD cards? Or Huawei, why don't you make it where we could either use micro SD cards or NM cards? So, yeah, I mean, the long and short, when a new cable does come out, I guess I'll add my third point in. It really for me to adopt a new kind of format, whether it's proprietary or standard, it needs to give me benefits that the previous format didn't have, or the more standardized kind of cable or port didn't have. Like in the case of Lightning, I had to buy new accessories because I used to use Apple products that had the dock connector, but I found that the Lightning cable, from my experience, they weren't nearly as fragile as micro USB. So I thought, okay, I'll embrace the standard. And like I said before, because you can buy Apple accessories pretty much at any convenience store or computer store, or they have that in their favor. And in another format I sort of use, but not really, is Thunderbolt, which I use Thunderbolt mainly for my gigabit Ethernet adapter when I used to live stream. And even when I go downstairs to my computer desk downstairs, that's where all my internet connectivity stuff, my modems and routers are downstairs. I will sometimes plug my laptop into the modem using that gigabit Ethernet adapter. and of course the benefit is that my laptop has Thunderbolt 2, and Thunderbolt 2 has much faster read and write speeds compared to USB, so it has that benefit. And then when USB-C and Thunderbolt 3 came out, because they're the same connector, it had even more benefits because it was faster, it was a smaller port, and unlike USB, it was reversible, so it was much more convenient. So even though it was a real pain that, now I'm going to have to get new cables to replace, or even I have to buy new cables and adapters for my devices to work with USB-C. I used to use a smartphone that had USB-C, and my Nintendo Switch uses USB-C. I embraced it because it was much more durable than micro USB, and it was much more convenient in that it was a reversible cable. So that's the other thing. The NM card, even though I kind of suspected that somebody was going to come out with a smaller memory card format compared to micro SD, because we went from having SIM cards to micro SIM cards to nano SIM cards, and now we're going from having SD cards, and then we had mini SD cards, and then micro SD cards, and now Huawei is coming out with their own smaller solution. So I figured it was inevitable, but I didn't expect it to come out from one smartphone company. I thought it was going to be something like we were going to have nano SD cards come out, for example. So I think the way it is, where Huawei is implementing it on their Mate 20 phones, where they'll have dual SIM card slots, but you can only use, at least from what I've heard, the NM cards with one of the SIM slots instead of micro SD. I'm not sure what kind of success Huawei will have. Even in emerging markets, I'm sure people are going to say things like, well, why don't I just use micro SD? It's the much more common format. So I think Huawei should have done to make this a much more universally appealing format is do something like where they had on their P9, where they offered a dual SIM card slot, but they said with one of those SIM card slots, you can either use a nano SIM card, a micro SD card, or a NM card. And unfortunately, I think Huawei wanted to nix micro SD, I'm guessing because their higher-ups want to make as much money from the NM card slot as possible. So I guess they're just going to go their own way with that, even though I think, it's not just Huawei. I was even saying the same thing with Apple when they launched their new MacBook Pros and they got rid of almost all the ports and just replaced them with USB-C. I was even saying back then, I think Apple should have kept all those ports and just maybe replaced the Thunderbolt port with USB-C to make it more universally appealing. So I just think Huawei is kind of pulling an Apple there in that they really should have just gave their consumers time to adjust rather than just thinking about, we need to make as much money as fast as possible. So that's my take on it. Please leave me your thoughts down below. Are you going to get the Huawei Mate 20 or Mate 20 Pro? Would you use those NM cards, or would you rather use a micro SD card with those phones? So please leave all those thoughts below. If you have any ideas for videos, please feel to leave them in the comments, or you can also email me. My email address is in the description of this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all later. Hey guys, be sure to like this Blood Moon Bobby video if you enjoyed it. Please share this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment. Be sure to ring the notification bell to be notified about my latest upload. Follow me on my social media pages at Blood Moon Bobby to find out about what I'll be covering next and for more of my opinions. Thanks for watching.